Okay, before we start this video, can I just say, it was really great to see so many Aussie flags in one place. It's been 2 years of constantly seeing support for Palestine, Iran, Hezbollah, the Houthis, whoever. This was a fantastic change. Now, Australia just witnessed perhaps a watershed moment. Massive protests erupted in all major capital cities across the country, with thousands marching against mass immigration. Let's rewind back a little bit. Australia is in fact rather multicultural and has seen the very successful assimilation of migrants over previous generations. However, something drastically has changed in recent years, especially post-pandemic. And these protests didn't come out of nowhere. They were the direct result of what Australians, suffering from years of income inequality, housing unaffordability, and cultural cohesion collapsing. So a few weeks ago in Sydney, thousands of protesters marching for Palestine, backed by politicians, celebrities, and yes, very dodgy groups like Hizb ut-Tahrir and even literal IS recruiters. In response, the March for Australia formed. Look, unfortunately, the well was poisoned before Sunday, well before that. It was a march that had no clear organisers, and therefore, real neo-Nazis took over and almost immediately gave the media and the political class the ammunition they needed to paint it as a racist fringe movement. But outside of this march, it's perhaps not too surprising that the vast majority of Australians polled actually do think immigration is too high. And at least from the live streams and such I watched on Sunday, it was clear to me that the vast majority attended because these were people struggling to stay afloat. Of course, this didn't stop influencers like Abby Chatfield, the supposed champion of the working class, immediately going after said working class.
The footage from this March for Australia rally is fucking it is so embarrassing. These people look exactly how you think they look, and they're the exact kind of people that you would imagine would go to these fucking rallies.
What do you do?
I'm a astrophysicist.
Okay, I'm a Gemini.
Well, Abby, here are some facts for you. After borders reopened, we didn't just return to normal migration, we blew past it. In 2022 to 23, net overseas migration hit a record 518,000 people, the biggest annual intake on record, driven mostly by temporary visas. That is a seismic demand shock to a housing system that was already creaking. Now, the government will say the numbers are coming down, and on paper, the budget forecasts net overseas migration to 260,000 in the 2024-25 year. Maybe, but that's a forecast, not an outcome. And even those lower levels are still huge against our current capacity to build. Every day, Australia is taking 1,500 people. So, day-to-day regular Australians don't feel any relief yet. We finished only 177,000 new dwellings in 2024, but underlying demand was 223,000. That's a gap of around 70,000 depending on how you cut it, and it adds to an existing backlog. When you run that math for years, you get queues, bidding wars, and families pushed further out. You can see it in the tightness of the rental market. National vacancy was around 1.2% in July 2025, basically nothing. Landlords like Abby Chatfield hold all the cards when there are that few homes available, and it shows up in rents. Rental affordability is the worst in the last 18 years on PropTrack's index. And if you're going to buy, it's not exactly rosy either. The government's own housing council says a new mortgage now eats 50% of a median household income, a new lease takes 33%, and it now takes about 10.6 years for a typical first home deposit. That is not sustainable. Of course, underlying fundamental issues led to this point, especially in our tax system and how housing is framed in the national conversation.
They actually are multi-millionaires who are profiting off you believing that it's the fault of immigrants, not of the ultra wealthy.
Abby, you are part of those elites. You, unlike people saving up for 10 years to buy a shoebox 50 kilometers away from the CBD, already use these tax incentives like negative gearing, which you admitted to here. And honestly, if the housing market keeps going the way it is, the only real option might be to just start civilization over from scratch. And funny enough, I've got the perfect guide for that. That's why I've been hooked on the book, The Ultimate Guide to Rebuilding a Civilization. It's over 400 pages of rare, practical knowledge you would never learn in school, but would be priceless if you had to start from scratch. Every fact is checked by scientists, historians, and other experts, so it's not just fascinating, it's reliable. This book is a large, premium hardcover on thick, heavy paper with hand-drawn illustrations that look like a cross between medieval manuscript and engineering diagrams. It's built to appeal to everyone. Into science or engineering, you'll find guides on water wheels, generating electricity, even making glass from sand. More into culture or history, there's art, music, storytelling. It's a book that works on a scientist's desk and an artist's coffee table. When I first opened it, I got stuck on a page about making penicillin from scratch. I've always thought if I ever time travel to the past, that's probably the one key skill I needed to have. It's also a perfect gift for curious minds. No wonder it became a global crowdfunding sensation, raising millions and selling hundreds of thousands of copies. And here's the twist. This book isn't simply a book, it's a quest. If you're really smart, try spotting the tiny butterflies hidden on the pages. They are the key to a chain of clues leading to a secret website. Only 7 people in the world have solved it completely. Maybe you'll be the 8th. And if you do, you'll get a mystery reward from Hungry Minds and join the Honorary Order of Seekers. Honestly, these print runs sell out fast. So while it's still in stock, grab your copy through my link and use my promo code. Now, back to the video. Post-pandemic, immigration undeniably got supercharged, and it's rather visible with entire outer suburbs in Sydney and Melbourne being flooded with newcomers. It's also undeniable that the vast majority of them come from 2 countries, India and China. In just the 2 years after the 2021 census, Australia's Indian-born population grew about 134,000 and the China-born by about 71,000, the 2 largest increases by far, and by June 2024, the stock was huge. 916,000 Indian-born Australians and 700,000 China-born. These numbers are staggering, and the Labor Party undeniably benefits if we are to believe pollster Cost Samaras, who revealed 85% of Indians vote for them.
85% of the Indian diaspora voted for the Labor Party at the last election, or give thereabouts. It varies across the country.
What was the number, sorry, Cos?
About 85%. In our polling, whenever we poll them, they're about that, 2-party preferred.
They are importing voters. That is undeniable. These numbers mean that in 5 years, Australia has taken in more people from India than Greeks and Italians in 100 years. As you know, I have an immigrant ethnic background like millions of Australians, if you couldn't tell already. But if I go a step further and compare this number to myself, Australia has taken more people from India and China recently than the entire population of my ethnicity in its entire history, dead or alive. That is nuts. Now, if you want to see perhaps the most viewed video on the immigration issue in Australia on this platform that goes much deeper into these issues, and that just so happens to be made by me, you can check it out right here. Now, this is where I do want to go beyond the economic issues and talk about the assimilation issue, which I'm sure a lot of people have a problem with now. If we are to go by the marches since October 7, 2023 in major cities in Australia, the mask has slipped big time. Australia has a huge issue with assimilation and multiculturalism now. I have raised the alarm about this rather publicly on this channel because we cannot deny what our eyes can see. There are a very large number of people who absolutely do not believe in Australian values.
There's no way! There is no way for an elevation of this ummah but the jihad! If the Australian government like it or not, if the ASIO likes it or not, if they want to deport me from Australia or not, the jihad is the solution for the ummah.
Whether it be freedom of speech, freedom of and from religion, the equality of sexes, and honestly, a respect for people from other faiths and backgrounds. And to me, at least, it's clear that Islam has a huge role to play here. Before the last election, inspired by shocking results in the UK elections, even Australia gave birth to its own sectarian voting blocs. Were they advocating for the well-being of Australians? Not at all. Foreign wars and causes were their biggest concern, and they didn't stop there. From burning the Aussie flag, terrorising people, molding Indigenous Australian causes to fit their protests, these are people, many born here, who genuinely do hate Australia and the West as a whole. It's no secret, and they want Australia to end up in the same place the UK is in today. Look, Assimilation isn't just about individuals fitting in, it's about the nation having the confidence to define what people are assimilating into. For decades, Australia could do that. There was a clear expectation. You came here, you worked hard, you raised your kids with opportunity, and over time you became part of the mainstream. The state and the community both reinforced that. But in the last 15 years, we have lost that confidence. Instead of saying, this is what it means to be Australian, they've outsourced identity to the language of diversity and inclusion. They've built a system that tiptoes around values for fear of offending, while assuming assimilation will somehow happen on its own. Spoiler, it does not. And the result? Entire communities can now live in Australia without ever really feeling Australian. Global communications make it easier than ever, and that connects people more to politics in the Middle East or South Asia than to their local suburb. Multiculturalism without assimilation becomes multiculturalism without connection. This is why you see sectarian voting blocs forming, why you see foreign flags dominating protests, why people can be born and raised here and still feel no loyalty to the country. It's not an accident. It's the logical consequence of a state that stopped insisting on shared values and of political parties that found it easier to harvest ethnic votes than to build national cohesion. The irony, in trying to celebrate difference, we have ended up hollowing out the one thing that could hold difference together, a strong civic identity. So what do we actually take away from these marches? To me, it felt like two completely different Australias standing in the same street. On one side, you had parents, workers, tradies, people who are just sick of paying half their income in rent and watching their neighbourhoods change overnight. On the other side, you had a handful of lunatics adopting ideas Australian diggers died fighting. And let's be clear, these people don't represent Australia, and they certainly don't represent the majority who showed up. They are parasites, attaching themselves to anger that's legitimate, and then using it to smear everyone else. And the media, of course, were only too happy to focus their cameras right on them. But if politicians keep dodging the housing crisis, if migration stays completely out of step with our capacity to absorb it, if assimilation keeps collapsing, then the extremists win anyway. Because every time ordinary Australians feel ignored, they're pushed closer to the fringes. The challenge now is whether this country can separate the signal from the noise. Condemn the Nazis? Absolutely. But also admit that behind those marches were real people raising real alarms that the political class refuses to answer. Don't be like the Abby Chatfields of Australia, where you claim to be for class issues and yet immediately go after the very same working class whenever they speak out. Australia is at a crossroads. We can either listen to them, or we can pretend it's all just fringe and wait until the next march is even bigger. Hey, you made it to the end. As always, don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, and give the video a thumbs up. It really helps. A massive thank you to all my channel members and Patreon supporters. You're the reason I can keep making content like this. If you want to support the channel, consider joining the crew. Just hit the join button below or head over to Patreon. Even a small pledge goes a long way, and I would genuinely love to have you on board. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.